Neil Magny versus Shavkat Rakhmonov takes place this weekend in the co-main event of UFC Fight Night Vegas 57, Tsarukyan versus Gamrot, and I can't wait for this welterweight matchup. Shavkat Rakhmonov, undefeated in the UFC, undefeated in his entire career as well, now takes a jump up against Neil Magny, a huge jump up in his career, because before this, he hasn't exactly taken on the best of competition, but that's normally how it is when you're coming up outside the rankings, and now you're taking on a ranked opponent. He's got to the rankings at number 15, I believe, and Neil Magny, big respect, because Neil Magny is that guy that takes on the up-and-comers. He was the only guy that was calling out Khamzat Chimaev when Khamzat Chimaev was barely ranked or unranked in the welterweight division. Neil Magny deserves a ton of respect from UFC fans because he is the guy that steps up when no one else is going to step up. I bet you they called a bunch of names before they called Neil Magny's name to take on Shavkat Rakhmonov, and none of them probably answered, but Neil Magny is the guy. He's the guy. We should thank him for being a sacrificial lamb for the slaughter, because I do believe that Shavkat Rakhmonov's going to go out there and finish Neil Magny brutally in the first round. I like Neil Magny, and honestly, he has had some decent performances in his career where you're like, okay, this is a guy who maybe could be something at welterweight. Like, he has a good performance against Li Jingliang where he dominates him over 3 rounds, and then he goes out there and just pieces up Robbie Lawler for 3 rounds as well and completely out-grapples him. But then you kind of notice that, okay, Li Jingliang gets completely destroyed by Khamzat Chimaev. Robbie Lawler's not looking too good recently either. I mean, he made it somewhat competitive against Nick Diaz after so long off, and if you watch that fight, neither of those guys looked good whatsoever. So, Neil Magny, it's difficult to tell just where he's at in his career, but I think his last fight was a pretty good indicator of where he's at, and it's not in a position where you're going to be beating a guy like Shavkat Rakhmonov. He took on Max Griffin, and Max Griffin is good. He's okay. He beat Mike Perry. Of course, I believe he was coming off a win over Carlos Condit before taking that matchup against Neil Magny. And arguably, he could have won the first 2 rounds of that fight. Now, fair enough, he did get dominated in the third. And towards the end of the second, Neil Magny started to have a lot of success as well. And that's kind of why they gave Neil Magny that second round, because he finished so strong. But, Griffin is Griffin. And he's very basic. And he's not too fast. And he's not really strong. And he's not really great at grappling, and he doesn't really do anything unorthodox whatsoever. He's just Max Griffin, and he throws 1-2s and calf kicks, and it's very simple to read, and Neil Magny had so much trouble against him, so much so that he got dropped in the first round brutally, and almost finished by Max Griffin. And now he's coming up against Shavkat Rakhmonov, and I don't like his chances here. That's just my opinion. I like Neil Magny. I respect him. But I think this is just another one of those fights that Neil Magny's going to take for the purpose of the company. It's going to make him earn a little bit more money. He's going to get his show money. He's going to stay active. And he's probably going to turn around real quickly after this and fight again this year. But Shavkat Rakhmonov is a very good prospect. And again, when you look at the ages of these prospects, sometimes you see a prospect coming in undefeated and they're like 30 years of age. 31, 29, they're going to make it to the top in time to really make an impact on the sport. But then you see that Shavkat Rakhmonov is 27 years of age. These new wave of guys are as good as they are at a very young age to where they're still going to be making massive, massive improvements in their game. And Shavkat has taken on good competition. He beat Colston Harris in his last fight. I picked Colston Harris to beat Shavkat Rakhmonov because I wasn't sold on Shavkat based on the first 2 opponents that he took on in his UFC career. Mikel Prazeres, fair play, he was 26-3. It's a really good record, I understand, but he was an old, fat imp in that matchup against Shavkat Rakhmonov. He did not deserve to be in there with him at welterweight whatsoever. He just looked completely out of shape. So small for the division. So I kind of put that down to, okay, Mikel Prazeres, he'd been out for a very long time. I don't know how old he was. I believe, he's 40 years of age now. So, you know, He hadn't fought since 2019, and he lost to Ismail Nurdiev there. His last win was in 2018 against Bartosz Fabinski, and then he got a split decision over Zach Cummings in 2018 as well. He'd fought at lightweight before, so I put it down to all of these reasons as to why Shavkat looked so good against him. And then you've got Alex Oliveira, and I picked him to win that one by first round guillotine submission, and he got it done by first round guillotine submission. And Alex Oliveira, you know, he's losing over and over and over again recently, barely gets a win over like a low level set of competition, and I was still not sold. You know, he lost to Nico Price, and they both looked terrible in that matchup as well. He lost to Kevin Holland recently and got finished. He just lost to Michael Silva and got finished in the second round as well at BF Mr. Cage Music Fight Show. So he's outside the UFC and still losing matchups. Like, I think he's used up all of his toughness points. If you watch his fight against Yancy Medeiros, he lost a massive amount of toughness. Just my opinion. Still good enough to beat Max Griffin, because again, as I said, it's Max Griffin, and that comes back to how I feel about Neil Magny as well. But like, you know, the Gunnar Nelson fight, he took a lot of damage. The Medeiros fight, genuinely, took all of his tough points. If you watch that fight, one of the best fights of all time, he just lost everything. He lost to Nicholas Dalby. It's just like, I was putting so many things as hidden reasons as to why Shavkat was looking so good. But then he beat Carlston Harris, and Carlston Harris is a legit good opponent. And then I was convinced. Finished him in the first round, spinning hook kick to ground strikes, stuffed a couple of takedowns early, had won a couple of scrambles on the ground as well, tried to get Carlston to the ground, but Carlston recovered a few times. So Carlston is a good opponent, landed a couple of shots, still looked good out there, fast, technical, but Shavkat's just so unorthodox on top of being amazing at the basics as well. Carlston Harris was 17-4. He was riding a 5-fight win streak going into that matchup, and he beat like 17-1 Sajid Azkameyev on UAE Warriors. Then he beat Christian Aguilera in the UFC and Impa Kasangane, who people saw as a good prospect in the welterweight division, and he finished him in the first round. So I was thinking, Shavkat may have beaten some lackluster competition, and here comes Carlston Harris ready to get the win, but doing that to him, I'm convinced. He's going to drop Neil Magny in the first round, hurt him badly, and yeah, he's just so good. He's so good. He's fought in some high-profile fights over at Battle of the Nomads. He was kind of like the face over there for a bit. He had some main events, I do believe, over there in those shows. He fought a 28-6 opponent at M1. M1 is a great promotion. Anyone you see come up through M1, they're usually quite good. It's kind of like KSW, like it's up there in terms of like a regional fight league. 11-3, 10-4, 8-1, 5-2. This guy's not a can crusher. You know what I'm saying? 13-3. He has had some issues early on in his career. Like, I believe he has a fight that went to the third round against Faradun Odilov, where he got taken down and beaten up really badly. And I'll say it, saved by the bell in the second round, but he came back in the third to get his own win. So he's got that toughness. He's faced adversity already in his career. And that's a good thing to see from an undefeated opponent, because usually with Chimaev, there's no adversity. And the most adversity that we can even talk about is, Aliskerov stuffed a takedown. You know? Hey, Aliskerov stuffed 2 takedowns, guys. He got a whizzer and stuffed a takedown. And that's the adversity that we're referencing to say that Chimaev is tough. You know what I'm saying? But with this, like, he's been pretty much finished at the end of the second round, saved by the bell, came back and got the win. Like, he's really shown that he can bounce back from, like, being nearly derailed of hype, essentially. And that's something that's good to see, because you don't want him to go in there against Neil Magny and then all of a sudden it goes badly in the second round and Magny starts to get takedowns and land some big shots and some big knees against the cage, and Shavkat doesn't know what to do because he's never been in that position before. Like, I was worried in round 2 with Chimaev versus Burns, because that's the first time we've seen Chimaev take those shots, but he showed us that he has a great chin and he can bounce back and get it done in the third when he needs to against a really tough opponent in Burns. Neil Magny ain't Gilbert Burns. Shavkat's amazing. I think he's going to move on, clean sweep him, finish him in the first round with like a straight right hand. He's got good reach. Of course, Neil Magny's got an 80-inch reach, but I've never seen a guy with such a long reach that has no idea how to use it more than Neil Magny. So I'm not going to trust him to get it done. Shavkat's really strong against a cage. That's where Magny does the majority of his wrestling. Shavkat's really good against a cage. He gets the underhooks. He'll crank. He'll find the underhook. Circle round. Push the guy against a cage. Knee him to the face. What he was doing against Alex Oliveira to set up his guillotine in the first place. I feel as though Neil Magny's going to get cracked here. I just can't. Maybe if he was coming off a different type of win, I would maybe understand the idea of picking him to upset him. And don't get me wrong, there is a chance that Neil Magny is going to play the role of just that little step up in competition that's too much for Shavkat Rakhmonov. But I just feel as though after the Max Griffin performance, can I say that he's going to... He beat Jeff Neal. Jeff Neal's really good. So that is good. But you got to go on current form. And he took a lot of time off after that Jeff Neal fight for a Neil Magny. 10 months off. Normally he fights like multiple times a year. And he took 10 months off after that Jeff Neal fight. And then he looked really bad. And you look at his age and like he's getting up there now, 34, you know. Like I think he's got a solid chance to make something happen. But I just think he's too open. And Shavkat, the way he's won early in his career... First round finish against Oliveira, rocks him on the feet, finds the guillotine. Mikel Prazeres, spinning wheel kick and then gets the rear naked choke in round 2 and makes it happen there. And Prazeres is tough to get down because he's a short, stocky guy. And for a tall guy to get him down and dominate him on the ground and get the choke, it's pretty difficult to do just shape-wise. You know what I'm saying? That's why it was so impressive to see Jones take down Daniel Cormier. Carlston Harris finishes him off in the first round. A great opponent, a big step up. So I think he's going to ride that momentum. He's been incredibly active. He fought back in February. Now he's fighting in June. 4 months apart. I think he's going to keep the ball rolling and get a straight right hand down the pipe that puts Magny down and then maybe get a submission from there. We've seen Magny at times when he gets put on his back. He does leave himself vulnerable. He showed good ability to escape certain positions against Michael Chiesa, but then you saw with RDA put a bit of a beating on him and got a submission there. Like he is open to be submitted. He's been KO'd. He's been choked out. Sure, by great opponents, but I think I'm going to chuck Shavkat in the mix of those great opponents. It's tough, though. You never know what Magny you're going to get. But that Max Griffin fight is a sign, I think, that maybe, like, this isn't... He wouldn't win a rematch against Jeff Neal. You know what I'm saying? Like, that Max Griffin fight really did not look good for him whatsoever. So the winner of this one, if it's Neil Magny, I guess he's going to get a jump up because he's beaten Jeff Neal, so he's obviously going to be very highly ranked if he wins this. He'll probably move above Sean Brady and start looking for maybe the winner of Luque versus Neal, maybe to get the bounce back against Jeff Neal. If Luque wins, they probably will do Luque versus Neil Magny. But if Shavkat wins, I reckon it's the same situation. The winner of Luque versus Jeff Neal, I think, is what they're going to do. Those guys are both going to be very highly ranked. They're lower names enough to where they'll be willing to take on a guy behind them. I think if Wonderboy wins and bounces back against like a Mikel Pereira or someone, or a Masvidal, or even they can't fight Gilbert Burns, but you know what I'm saying? He'll be looking for a guy up the rankings that's going to be a good matchup. Maybe he wouldn't mind a Shavkat matchup or a Neil Magny fight because they're not really like, they'll play in the striking a bit. They're not just going to completely wet blanket him against a cage, but, you know, I don't think I see any of those big names looking down the rankings and being like, I'll take on Shavkat. Maybe they give it to Gilbert Burns because he was the guy that took on Chimaev, so maybe Burns is the guy. We'll see how it goes. I reckon they'll be facing the winner of Luque versus Jeff Neal and then onwards and upwards from there in the welterweight division. I just hope they stay active. That's what I want to see. I hope Shavkat wins. First round finish. I think he is going to win by first round finish and then turn right back around and get another win or another fight in the welterweight division. And maybe at some point, who knows, in 2024, Chimaev versus Rakhmonov. Big fight in Abu Dhabi for the world championship. Usman's gone. Covington's maybe dipping down the rankings. You know, Burns is dipping down as well. And we get a completely new landscape in the welterweight division. Toodle pip, I'll see you later. Goodbye.